so you know, we are recording.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
If you just look up Angry Ginger on YouTube, you'll find them.
Okay. Okay. Well, for the purposes of introductions, I'm E.K. Lloyd-Williams.
I'm Jonathan D. Clark.
We're going to call him JD, though.
Why not?
I'm going by EK. You can go by JD.
It's fair that we go by...
It's initials.
Yeah, it's fair that we both go by initials.
Initials. So
anyway, this is the Murder of Prose podcast. We're going to talk about writerly things, be it prose, themes, motifs, symbolism. I'll even at one point probably show people how to format their novel if they don't know.
Probably about that. You're definitely going to do it.
I want to get paid.
We're here to help the people. And we're not going to charge them. We're
the writing folk who are for the people because I feel your pain. Anyway, today's topic
is we're basically just doing introductions, and then we're talking about the kinds of things that we write, or the kinds of things that we like to write, and why we like to write those things. And then we're gonna, at the end, discuss the difference between themes and motifs, because in my experience of speaking to other writers, it seems like a lot of people don't know the difference between a theme and a motif, which that's kind of your fault, but it's also not really your fault.
Are you saying it's my fault directly?
Your fault,
generally?
Their fault.
The audience. Okay.
But yeah.
For not educating themselves?
Well, it's not, like, it's, I guess, yes, but at the same time, like, that's not really something that I've only taken a couple of creative writing classes, and it was never, ever discussed. Like, literary devices were never discussed, and I guess literary like how to use a literary device properly and what it's called is something that doesn't get covered in creative writing. It gets covered in English literature, which I think...
Which has nothing to do with, because you're not learning anything in terms of writing, but you're learning how to interpret or even to catch those things.
Well, it would be, I think there are a number of writers who missed those lessons or just never took them.
Yeah, I mean,
or slept through them, I guess. I don't...
Well, I took creative writing as well, and I was never taught theme, motif, symbolism, irony, because in creative writing they just want you to focus on the story.
But you can't tell a good story if you don't know what you're doing with the things that you're using.
Well, that's the thing, though, is most writing classes they just want you to focus on the surface level. They don't want you to work below what's on the page.
That was a really weird hand gesture you just did.
That? You're welcome.
I really wish we could use that for the thumbnail.
We probably can if you want to. Just get to that point. Yeah.
Make it a GIF. My thumbnail's a GIF. Okay. So to start, what kinds of things do you write? And why do you write those things? And I say that because I know we're going to talk about standalones, and you only write standalones. So why do you only write standalones?
Oh, we're going with me first. Okay.
First we are.
Why would you have to go with me first? Why not go with the series first?
Myself first.
Shouldn't that make you go first then? Like,
no, because... No.
Okay, so...
These rules that I just made up.
If you want the simple answer without any depth to it...
No, we need depth to it. We're only at 6 minutes into the recording.
I'll give you the no depth answer, and then I'll go into it. I'll go lower.
So overview, and then we'll expand.
I'll go beneath the surface.
The surface.
Yes, the surface. To put it simply, you see this all the time on Twitter where, you hear people say, like, it was started off as a standalone novel, but I just love these characters so much, I had to write a series. No, I'm done with my characters by the time I'm done with the book. And most of them are dead. Spoiler alert for anyone who reads my novels. A lot of people die.
Shakespeare. The Shakespeare of our generation. Everybody dies.
Yeah. Except people will read my work and be like, he talks like that. The way he writes, that's how he talks. Because that's how Shakespeare wrote. He talked like that. No, also...
Poetry! Go on.
Also, in my opinion, I feel like a series stunts creativity because you stick to that one world and you stick with those characters that when by the time you get done with that series...
Creatively burnt out.
You're just burnt out.
Yeah.
It's why...
J.K. Rowling is only known for Harry Potter.
It's why she's only known for Harry Potter. It's why...
Not that Harry Potter's a bad series of books. I doubt if you've ever read Harry Potter.
Me? I've read all of them.
You did read all of them?
I read all of them. I didn't... Okay, correction. I didn't finish the 7th one because by that time I was just done.
Which is...
And I was 18, 19, 18, I want to say, when that book came out. I was done. I'm not a kid anymore. And technically I was still a kid, but...
No 18-year-old feels like a kid.
No 18-year-old feels like a kid, and it's like, I don't want to be reading books that I started reading when I was 9. You know?
But at that point, you waited so long to get your hands on it. I mean...
So I read, like, a little over half, and I was just like, nope, don't care.
Why did you keep going back to it until that point?
I really couldn't answer that question because the 5th one was so disappointing. And maybe I think I read the 6th one just because it's like, maybe, hopefully it gets better. And it was. 6th was actually better than the 5th. And then I was like, okay, let's just see how it ends. And then like I got a little over halfway done. I'm like, you know what? I don't care. I know how it's going to end. Voldemort's going to die. So I just tossed it aside. I'm like, I know how it ends.
But you don't know what happens.
I watched the fucking movie. I don't know if it's accurate,
it's marginal. Well, kind of accurate.
Where it's like, we're gonna have a dick fighting contest.
That is kind of...
My red light squandered your green light and made you...
it was very Star Wars-y.
Then Thanos snapped his fingers and Voldemort just, like, turned to dust. Every
hardcore fan was really upset about that, actually.
Then
Because he was just supposed to be, like, it was just supposed to be his body, and then they kind of, like, put his body on display. And they didn't get to do that in the movies.
So...
Because it was a little macabre.
To further the point of creative exhaustion because of a series, look at other writers like Stephanie Meyer, who wrote Twilight. She wrote other books, right? Like The Chemist or something.
I honestly don't know. Oh, I think she did one called The Host.
Yeah, or something like that. But like you don't...
Which was actually a better story. Like, if she had been known for The Host instead of Twilight, like, a lot more people would take it seriously.
And then she went back to Twilight to do Midnight Pomegranate or something.
Apple?
Wasn't it a pomegranate on the cover? Anyway.
I don't know.
Then there's Suzanne Collins, who did The Hunger Games. I don't know if she's done anything else or if she just wrote those 4 books.
I thought there were only 3. Were there 4?
I don't know.
No, there's 4 movies, I think, because they split the one in half. Okay. Like Harry Potter, like the last Harry Potter got split in half, so all the big
and that just started,
were like, we're going to split our last book in half because they did it too. And it's like, then you might as well split all of the movies in half and get all of the...
Although, you know what? There's 9 Harry Potter films, but there's only... Not 9. 8 Harry Potter films, but there's only 7 books. J.K. Rowling got lazy.
Yeah. I've seen that on Tumblr too. I have seen that one. So the idea behind not writing a series is so that you don't get pigeonholed.
Pretty much.
That's what it sounds.
Because like, okay, so look at Harry Potter. You would technically classify all those books in fantasy. I don't want to be the fantasy guy. I don't want to be the sci-fi guy. I don't want to be...
You want to be the Arcadia guy.
What? I'm just known by my one book.
Read Arcadia. That's how, like, that's what they're gonna know you by, is Arcadia. Until you release False Cathedrals, and False Cathedrals is still relatively similar from what you've told me.
Not in setting.
Not in setting, but that's what.
Obviously in style.
Otherwise, it would be Arcadia Part 2.
Which it's not, despite having connections. Anyway, I also view it kind of as, once you get stuck in a genre or you're stuck in a series, specifically we'll go with series, you're only writing about, let's just use Harry Potter. You're writing about Harry Potter and Ron Weasley and Hermione. So basically you're just rehashing, because books 1 through 3 were essentially the same story, just a different villain, and they're older. Because it starts before school. During school, shit's gonna happen. School ends, end of book. So it becomes formulaic, and to me, that's...
boring.
It's boring.
As an author, it does get boring.
When you write standalones, there's room to experiment. Be it with the way you tell the story or with how you craft it. So that's why I will, if, like, even Arcadia started off as I had it as an idea as a 3-part series, and I was like, no, fuck this, I'm gonna condense the story into one book.
So that whole thing was good, like the whole thing was gonna be spread out.
The whole thing was gonna be like book 1 of Arcadia was gonna be part 1 of Arcadia. It was gonna be, I cut a lot out in terms of what actually happens story-wise. And then part 2 was going to be...
You don't really get the sense from reading Arcadia, because it feels like it's a complete story. Like, you don't get the sense that you cut a bunch of stuff out.
No. But there were complete storylines and characters that just never made it into it, because I was like, it's not necessary. Like, actually, because you've read it, Nikolai almost didn't make it. He almost didn't make the cut. But I did some test writing with his character and was like, I actually enjoy what I'm writing in terms of how he's feeling with his career choice, because he's pretty much at a dead-end road. And
you're avoiding spoilers, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I'm avoiding spoilers at all costs.
Yeah, I guess you could call it a dead-end road, what happens to him.
Yeah. But yeah, so like part 1 was going to be the book 1, part 2 was going to be book 2, and then 3 and 4 was going to be book 3.
And you just didn't want to go to all that effort?
I just didn't want to make it seem bloated. Like, because as I was crafting, like, there's so much that's not needed that would just act as fluff. And even with some series that I've read, that's what it feels like for some books. Some books were just, yeah, I want to write, so I wrote book 3. I want to write book 5, but there's this gap. I could just say time has passed, but no, I'm going to, like, fill in that gap with
just book 4. Time passed.
Yeah.
Published.
But no, I'd rather have it just kind of like how, like, Star Wars works. Like, there's shit that happens between episodes. At least in the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy, because, like, let's just use episode 1. Anakin's like 9 years old, and you go to episode 2, he's 19 years old. There's a 10-year gap, but they don't tell you what happens.
I think at that point it's just assumed that you'll know.
Yeah. It's like, okay, well, Anakin spent 10 years in training, and then Queen Amidala became a senator, and okay, so, but you don't know the nitty-gritty. And I feel like a lot of series, like some of the books, it's just like, I didn't want to do the time gap thing. I wanted to, like, even though it's kind of a sagging middle of the series. You know, book 4 of Harry Potter. And book 5. Book 4 and 5, it's the sagging middle. Yeah, I just didn't. I didn't want to have 3 books that was basically just very little story, a lot of cushion. So I just schlumped it.
And told a very raw kind of story.
Yeah. So. Yeah, raw. You know, chapters 14 and 15.
God, I feel like chapters 14 and 15 would have been a lot less harrowing if there had been, like, at least a little bit of fluff for everyone to forget what you did, you monster.
Well, that would have been all in book 2, so, like, they would have still happened together. It would have been better to have, you know, like, oh my god, book 3, as long as nothing happens like it did in book 2, I'm fine. But no, I made it all happen in one book.
Yeah, it was an emotional roller coaster for sure.
You're welcome.
I didn't thank you.
I know no one. I know no one will thank me for that.
But you're welcome anyway.
But you're welcome anyway. It's kind of like there's this little bit that I saw on Saturday Night Live when I was in high school, and it's like one of the weekend update guys is like, something % of women have tested positive for AIDS, and then he just looks at the camera and goes, "You're welcome."
Oh God. See, it's funny because it's funny that you don't, like, you won't do a series. You flat out refuse.
Refuse
to do anything that's remotely series-ish.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I've got How to Cure coming out here in the next month, and it's part of a series.
Yeah.
But it's not formulaic. Because it's not like I'm not like we have the characters, we have the same characters, but I'm not revisiting the same scenarios. Like they're moving from first base and then they're going to go to second base and then third base to home.
Work their way around. Yeah. Well, there's only 3 books, so third and home would be.
Well, you don't know. I might decide to do second and third base in book 2, and then third base and home in book 3. But right now we've basically just gone to first base. I can't really say anything more about it. It's besides that it's a political thriller, but it doesn't get formulaic like what you say a lot of series do.
Well, having read How to Cure, there's no way you could do formulaic because of all the stuff that happens in it. You
so much that's happening.
You wouldn't be able to rehash any of that because it's like, well, such and such character already went through that. Why are they going through it again in book 2?
Well, not even that, but all of the characters end up making, you know, their various departures in the way that they do.
Yeah.
Like half of them die. Do half of them die? Well, no, not even half of them.
Not even half. I would say like a good
3.
I would say a good fourth of them die.
Yeah, there are those the ones that die, and in that way they make a departure. But then in the others go off and do their thing, which is what Vampire Bite and While Losing Your Mind are going to be about.
Yeah.
Because they have to get and specifically Mallory has to get to the bottom of this thing that she's discovered.
Yeah.
I can't.
So okay, so you've got that as a series, do you have any standalones planned though? Like, would you write a standalone?
The Fall of Sagarmatha.
Okay.
The Fall of Sagarmatha is going to be a standalone. The Fisherman is a standalone.
Isn't that just a short story though?
No, it's not a short story. It's more like an anthology. Like a
collection of like interconnected short stories?
Well, they're all going to be following him.
Okay.
But it's different scenarios. So it'll be the fisherman and Louise. And it's gonna follow him through some of his murders, and then it's gonna follow her through some of her murders, and then they're gonna be in tandem before we reach our resolution.
Okay.
For like they're working together for a short time and then not. I would tell you more, but then I'd have to edit that bit out, and I don't want to have to do that.
That's fine.
That's too much work for me. I'd rather just record all of this and then send it up.
Throw it on.
Throw it on. You're getting it raw.
Maybe I should do things that will force you to have to edit. Like if I just
won't.
You won't?
I won't.
Then I'm not doing anything.
I mean, do it all you want. Do it. Do whatever you want, all you want. I'm like, I don't care. I'm not going to edit. I have no shame. But I feel like we spent more time talking about your standalones than we have about my series.
We've only really brought up Arcadia, though.
Yeah.
And hinted at False Cathedrals.
You can't really get into False Cathedrals because False Cathedrals hasn't been out for 2 years and ripped off by a band.
Let's save that for another video, please.
I'm still sore about it.
Yeah.
It's not my book, and I'm still sore about it. But no, the fall of Sagarmatha is probably one of the only. I mean, I guess technically it's not my only standalone, but it's my only complete like chronological story that's standalone.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which isn't because I haven't done standalones. I just get into these universes that are way too big, because otherwise all my books are going to end up being like this fucking thick.
In my opinion, what's wrong with that?
Well, it's not going to hold the attention of the average audience.
That's true. I mean,
I don't mind reading a 1,500-page book, but not a lot of other people want to sit down.
Not a lot of people even want to sit down for 300 pages.
Well, how many pages is How to Cure?
420 something.
420 exactly.
It might go up, obviously.
Well, it will go up once I finish doing all the edits.
Yeah.
It's in its last stages, but it's because it's all part of a larger universe. Like we were what we were talking about last night. Technically, it's its own series, but it leads into
other projects.
It leads into Shiver. It leads into Cora Florence, because all of those things are happening within the same universe. Which is not like I could do all that in a standalone, but some of the events, like especially if you're going to follow a series of events and you're going to do it coherently, you have to give people some breathing room.
Yeah.
Which I feel like is what I'm going to end up doing, because there's only going to be 3 books with the How to Cure a Vampire Bite While Losing Your Mind. Because that was the most coherent I could make that title when I broke it up.
So originally that started off as...
It started off as the single title of one work.
Okay.
So originally, when I had these characters originally, it was How to Cure a Vampire Bite While Losing Your Mind. And then the next part of the story was how to survive in a different century without being decapitated.
Which century is that, though?
17th? 17th.
So the 1600s?
Do I have my history right? It was the era of Charles I, just before he was executed.
I want to say
during the English Civil War. I want to say
17th century. I want to say.
Yeah, I think he died in like 1649.
Yeah, that's the 17th century.
And that was, I had to do a lot of research for that book, though. Like, a lot. More than I normally would. But it just didn't make any sense, so I couldn't keep it. I had a whole other story that I completed, too. Which was the small town vampire thing. Which was halfway a mockery of Stephanie Meyer and halfway just me being ridiculous. But that one was completed. Different Century Without Being Decapitated was completed. I was into long titles for a little while.
You went through an emo phase?
I went through a pretentious phase. That way. I went through a pretentious phase, and then I didn't wake up one morning, but I gradually realized I'm a fucking asshole. Maybe tone it down a bit.
Or just cut it up into 3 different books.
Cut it up into 3, and fucking everything happens to me in 3s, too. Like, I didn't go in intending to do a 3-part series, but that's what it became. Everything happens in 3s, and I don't know why. I don't know what I did to deserve this, and I'm frankly annoyed.
Well, I think we sort of went over last night where you said that the number 3 is your number, so...
It's not, well, it's not my number, it just keeps reoccurring. I refuse to claim it. It annoys me. I don't like the number 3. I don't like it. It irritates me.
I'm just going to start sending you gifts of 3 from now on. Here's 3 books.
You've never sent me anything in my life. In your life. You've never sent anyone a gift, ever.
That's not true. Does it count if I leave it on their doorstep?
No.
No? That's not sending stuff?
That's not technically sending something. That's just dropping it off on their doorstep because you couldn't be bothered to give it to them in person.
Well, they weren't home.
Why didn't you go find them?
Because it was before the era of smartphones, and cell phones still costed money before 9 p.m. So I was like, dropping it off.
That's different. Still kind of weird, though. If it were me, I would have assumed it was a bomb. If it were a gift from you that had been dropped off on my doorstep, I would assume it was a bomb.
Well, at the time, you probably would have assumed anthrax.
I didn't know what anthrax was at that time. Huh?
It's a band.
Okay.
It's also a white powder that'll kill you.
Is anthrax a band?
Anthrax is a band, yes.
Jesus. People call themselves anything these days.
Showing your ignorance there. Your musical ignorance. People start to question your credibility here.
Yeah, because I don't listen to a lot of music. I mostly just read books.
You don't listen to music while you read your books?
No.
I listen to music while walking and reading.
Well, while walking is one thing, while driving is one thing, but while reading, no, it's getting in the way. Shut up, Bach. Do you know the difference between a theme and a motif?
Well, a motif is something that recurrently comes up and can help set up the theme or ties in with the theme.
Yes.
And the theme is typically the message or something you're trying to convey in your work. At least that's how I've always viewed it.
You're not wrong. I'm just being snide.
I'm half-baked. I'm just half-baked.
You're not wrong. I'm just being snide. So the theme, it is the subject. It's the overall subject. And it's not just one word. Love is not a theme. Revenge is not a theme.
No.
Single parenthood is
not a theme.
Not a theme. Food is not if it's a single word and it doesn't convey an idea or an idea. It's not a theme.
No.
No, a theme would be this: the sins of the father come down to the son.
Yeah.
Or the sins of the father pass on to the son. That's a theme, and we show that with the story. A motif would be what would haunt the son, or what recurring thing, what pattern would the son recognize? So you could do alcoholism as a motif. You could do
abusive.
There's a whole, like, it's God, there's a whole fucking list. Not even a list. It's just infinitely possible. Any single idea, any single subject that keeps recurring is a motif. That's why it's called a motif. A certain car that he sees, a certain type of clock, a certain time of day. Love. The concept of love, the things that he experiences, like people who love him. Self-hatred. Those are recurring things. Those are recurring subjects.
Yes.
I'm waiting for you to add something here.
So let's just bring it to our level. What is a motif in How to Cure? As long as it's not spoiler.
A motif in How to Cure. I'd spend so much time in this novel, you'd think I would know. Isolation.
I would also say distrust.
Distrust.
There's a whole lot of distrust
abuse,
in that novel.
Levels of paranoia.
And that ties in. That helps tie in the theme of what?
That ties into the theme of how do I put this? There's always a way out.
Okay.
There's always a way out. In the deepest circle of hell, there's always a way out. And so the motifs that we use to express hell are isolation, distrust, paranoia, abuse. All of these things keep coming up. And that's how you describe hell.
Mm-hmm.
The way out of all of that is the risk in trust. So she starts just trusting certain people for no reason other than that she has no other recourse.
Mm-hmm.
Other one, hope. Hope is another motif.
Yeah.
Something
comes
that
up later.
It comes up later, but that's what happens. Like when you get out, when you are kicked out of hell, when you end up being able to leave the distrust and the abuse and the isolation behind. So you have to, like, it's that conscious decision not to be isolated, not to isolate yourself, not to distrust, not to despair.
Mm-hmm.
So what would be a motif in False Cathedrals? What's the theme and what are your motifs?
I would say, given that there's 5 main characters, they all sort of represent the 5 stages of grief. So grief is obviously a motif within it. Each one being like, so you have denial, depression, anger, bargaining, and acceptance. But like I would say the theme is that despite our best efforts, we're all prone to some form of ugliness.
The inherent ugliness of the human
The inherent nature, the inherent ugliness of human nature.
God, it's depressing.
See, as to where you bring in a sense of hope, mine's just desolation. Although it does end, the ending I have in mind for the epilogue of False Cathedrals, it does sort of end on a positive note.
Yes.
But
on a relatively positive note.
On a relatively positive note, because
it's really positive.
Like once we're off air, I could tell you what the final line is going to be.
You're not going to share that with?
I'm not going to share that with. No, because if I tell them, because some people believe that if you share the last line or the last paragraph of a book, you ruin it, which makes no sense to me.
It was indeed better. That's the last line of How to Cure.
Yeah.
It was indeed better.
Yeah, it was indeed better.
That hasn't ruined anything, because you don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Or the last line of Arcadia. This was only the beginning, she thought.
Which doesn't actually ruin it, because it's not the beginning of anything. Sorry.
Okay, I'll just share the final line of False Cathedrals.
You don't have to. I wasn't trying to pressure you. I'm just.
No, you're not pressuring me. I
silly,
basically just the last line of the book. Probably hardly anyone's read. So and it doesn't spoil anything. The final line of False Cathedrals is we create our own narrative.
We create our own narrative?
Yes.
I mean, you're not wrong in that. But it also doesn't spoil anything. It actually kind of doesn't spoil anything. No, it doesn't spoil anything, but it actually kind of helps you understand part of what's going on in False Cathedrals.
Yeah.
That only took 10 minutes. So your motif, your themes and your motif. Your theme is your subject. In his case, the inherent ugliness of human nature. In my case, there's always the way out of hell.
There's a way out. Yeah,
there's a way. Now, his motif is grief. And that's actually, you break yours down a little bit. Like, you explored all the parts of it.
I explored all the parts of grief. The depression, the denial, bargaining, anger, and acceptance. Through individual characters.
And in my case, it's isolation and despair, and then hope.
Yeah.
And you end up exploring that, and that's the pattern to look for. So the motif is the pattern to look for when you're reading the book. It's not the subject. It's the pattern that helps you to understand the subject. So, for example, we got to pull from a piece of work that people actually know.
Okay.
The theme of we'll do an easy one. The theme of Moby Dick.
Okay, go ahead.
Moby Dick. What I got from it when I read it, the theme is the self-destruction of, the inherent self-destructive nature of revenge. More or less. The motif is nautical. Everything nautical. It's just, that's the pattern. And that's how you understand what it is to drown yourself in revenge.
Uh-huh.
Well,
because of the water.
Because of the water, yes. Because of the water. Heat, ho. That's, you pick one. I did one, you pick one.
Okay. I'm trying to think of a book other people have read.
Jesus Christ.
Well, I'm looking through my collection.
It's been a while, but the Three Musketeers. What would you have called the three? What would you say the theme of the Three Musketeers is?
Bold of you to presume I've read that.
God, have you read anything before 1900?
Count of Monte Cristo.
Okay, theme of Count of Monte Cristo and the motifs. Go.
I would say the motif is revenge. Like the insanity that like revenge, like a revenge-induced insanity. Like, because Edmund literally is mad with the desire to avenge himself for the time he lost, the life he lost.
So loss and revenge are the motifs.
Yeah, loss and revenge are the motifs. The theme is, I would say, sometimes you have to accept what's been given to you. That's what I get out of it. Because, like, yeah, it hasn't had like a happy ending, but like if you look at the psychology of it, like technically he still has that time lost. He still has that time lost to himself. He doesn't get that time back by getting revenge. I would say the theme I get, or at least what I get from it, is that you should just accept the hand that's been given to you.
I think you're thinking of the moral of the story.
Okay. Yeah, okay, it's the moral, not the theme. The theme.
Okay, let's do an easier one. The Great Gatsby.
I would say the motif that just keeps popping up is decadence.
It's the selfishness of the uber wealthy.
The decadence. And selfishness of the, yeah, sure, we'll use the word uber wealthy. The theme. The theme, to quote the Rolling Stones, you can't always get what you want.
That's true. That's actually quite applicable in that context. That might even be what he was thinking when he wrote it.
Well, I mean, if you look at Fitzgerald's life,
you can't always get what you want. No, yeah.
What you want? He was this feeble man. He wanted to be.
He was a feeble man. He was very weak.
He wanted to be like Hemingway. He wanted to be the man's man. Which, I mean, if you look at Nick, feeble, Jay, in the presence of other people, he's, very.
I don't think gregarious is the right word.
No, but when you see Gatsby in private, he's a completely different person. He's more like, again, Fitzgerald, pining for something, pining for. I mean, in the book it's Daisy, but Fitzgerald was pining for something, pining for greatness. And you can't always get what you want, because if you look at, again, Fitzgerald's career, he wrote The Great Gatsby, and that's what he's known for. Everything else is kind of,
Not all of it.
Not all of it. The dude couldn't write a short story to save his life. Some of his other novels were okay. But he'll always be known as The Great Gatsby.
It's true.
That's how it's going to be for a lot of authors, if not all authors, is you're known for your one book. You could write books.
So in the context, so in terms of Great Gatsby, the theme is you don't always get what you want.
Yes.
The motif that helps to
reinforce that.
Yes. Is selfishness.
Yes.
Because all of those because every single one of them
selfish.
Incredibly.
They have their wives or their spouses, and they have their side lovers. That's selfishness right there. You can't be happy with what you already have. You have to seek more.
Or and in the case of Jay Gatsby, it wasn't just Daisy. It was also that material. Yeah. That material love.
Sometimes the party has to end.
And in Nick's case, it was the envy of.
Yeah, he wanted to have Gatsby's life.
Yeah. I hope that helped everybody.
And I also want to help ourselves.
Mostly,
Understand ourselves a little bit
trying
more.
to understand ourselves, so we're doing this podcast.
We walked away so proud. Pat on the back, punch in the balls. I think I'm supposed to do that first, punch in the balls and pat on the back, but whatever.
I get, yeah, it would help, but because if you beat yourself and then pat. Okay. We did talk about suggesting a writing exercise at the end.
Yes, we did. Do you want would you want the viewer to just pick whatever book they want, or do you want to like suggest an author?
I would suggest an author. So, like, right, just a starting point. And it doesn't even have to be specifically that author. It's just a starting point, just something to try. Yeah. For fuck's sake, try.
Should we pick an author that we think a lot of people have read, or should we be cruel and be like, pick this one?
No, I think let's start easy. I think you have more obscure works than anybody else I know.
I would say going easy, because I'm going to just safely presume, other than myself, people have read King.
Stephen King?
Yeah, Stephen King.
Okay.
Try to emulate or capture his voice.
So, Jesus. So,
you do. Yeah.
The specific step of this practice, you're not just trying to emulate that person, because anyone can do that. Everybody feels like that's what they're going to do. What you're doing in this case, take the book, like just pick a book of Stephen King's that you really enjoy, and find a particular passage that you like. Read it aloud to yourself, whatever, get a feel for it. And then just as an exercise to sharpen your skills as a writer, write a page of just your own stuff, but try to use his voice. Try to use his tone, his diction, his theme, hell, if that's what you want to do. But the idea in this sort of writing exercise is that you find a writer, either one that you admire or one that you've never heard of, and you try to write mimicking their voice. And you don't, like, it's not to say that you have, like, because these are established people, you have to write like these people. The idea is that you'll expand your skill set. If you can do kind of like what Stephen King does, if you can write something that feels like Stephen King, you've mimicked Stephen King, you've mastered King. That's it. You've mastered his technique. Then move on to the next one. Do Hemingway. Go a little off script. Who would you suggest? Like, for this little writing exercise that we're doing, who would you suggest?
Okay. Since you say I read obscure people, I won't go too obscure and say try Joyce, because he's maximalist. Because you mentioned Hemingway, so he's minimalist, so just go complete opposite spectrum and do Joyce. Or even if you're not wanting to do Joyce because he's Irish and he does write Irish, like a lot of slang is Irish, I would say go, if you're an American viewer and you want to stick to American style writing, go with Faulkner. He's still a maximalist, but not, oh, how are you doing today, lad? He's not gonna.
I knew you were going to get one in there somewhere. The whole point of this exercise is not to tell you that you have to write like these people. It's just to expand your skill set. Because part of the story is it's on both sides. Some of your books you can get away with doing all of the words. And then some of them, doing all of the words won't work, so you have to pare it down to just the bare minimum, just what you need to tell the story, and nothing else. And that's at the discretion of the author, what kind of story you're trying to tell, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of any exercise is to just improve your skill set. And what we've suggested here is just one of the things that we've learned from people that we respect on how to improve ourselves.
Yeah.
Or I learned it from people that I respect. I know you have very little respect for anybody. Anywhere.
I mean, there are a few writers I respect, but they're,
Mostly I learned it from my junior year English teacher, and I know you had absolutely no respect for her. No
respect.
No respect. But it's still a good practice, though, is it not?
It's a good practice. I've done it myself, not with any of the authors we've mentioned, because I did it with Joyce. I didn't do it with Hemingway because I don't want to be that sparse.
Try it with Steinbeck.
Steinbeck? I've read The Pearl. Could probably try it with The Pearl.
Did you read East of Eden?
No, I didn't. Isn't Of Mice and Men his as well?
Yes.
Okay, I've read that as well. So I've never read East of Eden.
I liked that one. That one actually was slightly sad. It was for a long time. It was one of my favorite novels.
Did you say it was sad?
It was slightly sad.
I'll say it's Steinbeck. Of course, it's going to be sad.
Well, of course, it's Steinbeck. That's another thing that you'll notice newer authors and newer readers as you go down this writing rabbit hole is that everybody kind of has their thing that they stick to. In JD's case, it's just nihilism and despair. And in my case, it's demented hopefulness.
That fits.
Like there's no reason to be this hopeful, but we're gonna do it anyway. That's my brand.
The world's going to shit, but we're gonna have a smile on our face.
The world's going to shit, but we're gonna have a good fucking time while we do it. That'll be the thumbnail. Is there anything else before we before we shut this down and move on to terrorize each other further offline? Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Not for this episode, no.
Okay. Well, that was a great introduction with minimal interruptions.
Minimal, yeah. I was expecting a few more crashes on my end.
Yeah, just the one. And I think hopefully we'll be able to edit that out so nobody notices.
Well, you'll notice, but
I'll notice because I'm the one putting it together.
I mean, like, you're going to notice, like, a sort of a jump, because it's not going to be completely fluid.
I suppose we'll have to leave this bit in there then and say, just for the sake of continuity, JD's computer crashed because it's a bitch.
Yeah.
Because it's a fun-ruining bitch.
Anyway, this has been a Murder of Prose. I don't know if we've said the name of the podcast, but this...
We said it at the very beginning, but it's worth saying it again so they know.
Saying it again. It's kind of like... It's kind of like, when you leave a voicemail, it's like, hi, hey, this is, JD, I'm just calling to, I was hoping to catch you. Anyway, bye. This is JD. And you hang up. You just kind of reinforce it.
If you left that kind of a voicemail for me, and I know as soon as we leave this, that's exactly what you're going to do.
I'm going to do it.
But if you left that voicemail for me, I would have to find you and punch you in the dick.
What if I do it as Elmo?
Don't do it as Elmo.
Kermit the Frog.
Don't do a voice.
Smeagol.
Please don't do it. Unless you're going to do Miss Piggy.
No, I'm not going to do it. That'll be how I just say hi on the phone.
You know something? Start all of these podcasts with that.
With that? Okay, from here on out, I will
start.
From here on
out, he's going to be Miss Piggy saying, there we go. All right, peace out, Girl Scouts. Let's leave this shit show.
Doodles.